I'm scared! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the J Contra Kitchen Studio. I'm your man in Japan, J Contra, and I'm here to talk about disc rot, which is something that has made me kind of anxious ever really since I started collecting video games. Most of my collecting started out with cartridge systems. I started with the N64. I went to kind of leapfrogged over the Super Nintendo to the Famicom. Went to the Super Famicom, realized everything was crazy expensive, so why not go into Sega Saturn, even a little bit of PC Engine stuff. The only problem is that I was playing Final Zone 2 the other day, and I flipped around the CD as I was going to put it away. And what did I find? I don't know if you can see it in the camera here. It is a bit... it's kind of tough, it's hard to see, but there is a milky, thin layer of grossness on the CD. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my first ever case of disc rot. Now, it's not bad. It has not yet proved fatal to this poor copy of Final Zone 2, but it is going to be fatal, and it is going to happen to every single one of your discs. Back in the 80s, the 70s, I don't even know whenever the CD was invented. We were told, Sony lied to us. They said these would last hundreds of years. Okay, maybe they didn't say that exactly, but everyone was saying, oh, these will outlive you. False. That is not what's happening. I have read reports online of GameCube discs being the worst for disc rot. Now, that might be an American thing. I have a few GameCube discs of my own from Japan, and they seem to be perfectly fine. But this here is a, I don't know, almost 30-year-old disc. This came out in what, 1990? That's 28 years ago. Some J Contra math right there. 28 years ago, and this is happening. And why is this happening? And why should you particularly be afraid of your Japanese games rotting away in their disc cases or in their binder, however you choose to store your game? Well, for one, the weather here is terrible. You ever heard of rainy season? It's like a month where you don't even see the sun. So all you get is just humidity, constant humidity. And these apartments, these houses in this country are not built to keep out humidity. So what happens is if you leave your game out, for even just a precious few seconds outside of its protective casing, it is going to suck up humidity, and if you, God forbid, leave it next to a window, it's just going to be cooked by that hot, fiery orb around which we rotate. That means Japanese games are, for whatever reason, the weather, I believe, are going to be much more prone to disc rot than discs in other countries. Now, there are a lot of other variable factors. Are you smearing your gross hands over particularly the top layer? The bottom layer has, for these early CDs, that's where the thick plastic is. It's on the bottom. It's later DVDs, like PlayStation 2 games, will have equivalently sized plastic protectors on both sides of the aluminum center where all the data is stored. But on these old CDs, the top protective coating is microscopically thin when you compare it to the bottom layer. That means when you touch it, when you get your body chemicals, because that's what we are, just a bunch of chemicals, when you're touching your CDs, you gotta be careful. So sometimes you just gotta keep the inside down when you're putting it away. You see, these cartridges, these things will actually last forever. Not only do they have a very resilient outer plastic casing, but the mask ROM that is inside is going to last for like 1,000 years because, for one, humidity's not going to touch this thing. Yes, the contacts are going to rust, they're going to decay, but the game itself, the ROM has all of this like techno covering that is way beyond me and things that I do not understand, but this is solid. Bit rot is not really going to be a thing with these mask ROMs. It's going to be different for prototypes where you have rewritable storage. We're not even gonna deal with that. Those prototypes might as well already be dead. But I just wanted to bring this up in this video thing that I'm trying out. It is part of my collecting anxiety. I have so many things that I worry about with my collection. How things are being stored, making sure the boxes aren't stacked on top of each other so that they just press down so that the weight of the boxes eventually compresses the box and ruins everything. Ruins the collection, even though I'm not touching anything. What is going to happen to these discs? Because I go to these stores where you find games like, for example, Sapphire. It's to use a PC Engine CD example. Sapphire is a $700 game. It is insane to me that there are people who will pay multiple hundreds of dollars for a plastic coated collection of bits. But that's just me. I mean, I love Battle Garega, and one day, probably within my lifetime, this is going to be dead. I'm not going to be able to play this game on the original disc anymore. And that's something that makes me sad. This is going to last forever. And so, at least for me personally, I don't want, if you want to spend $500 on Hyperduel, for example, for the Sega Saturn, it's a shooter. If you want to spend $500 on a disc, you just need to keep in mind that no matter how well you store it, you could store it in a humidor. Are humidors good? You could store it in a room full of dehumidifiers in the tropical Japanese climate. And one day, the plastic is going to warp. The metal that stores the bits that are the game will corrode, and the game will be no more. That is the reason why I am very hesitant to spend, even $100 plus on a CD-based game. But that's my value judgment. Because to me, I want to have the game forever. I want my children, or more likely my niece or my nephew, to be cursed with the burden of getting rid of all of my antique trash. But if you want to buy a bunch of Sega Saturn games, I think going forward, as we look in it, as we enter an era when there are $100, $200 plus PlayStation games, when we are now entering a time of $200 plus PlayStation 2 games, I think we need to take a step back from our collections. We need to take a step back from our anxieties about how the death and decay of objects, of antiques, of meaningless objects, which is what these are. We need to look, we need to take a step back, and we need to recognize that nothing lasts forever. This copy of Contra will not last forever. It'll probably last a couple lifetimes if for some reason people still have the two-pronged 100 or 120 volt outlets, 300 years from now, who knows, in the Star Trek future. But there will be a time, maybe it'll be the heat death of the universe, maybe it'll be when the sun turns into a red giant and consumes the Earth in red-hot flames. But something that I need to keep in mind, and something that I hope you viewers that share my anxieties, I hope my little bit of I don't want to say wisdom, because that makes it seem more important than it actually is, but the thing I want you, and the thing I want even myself to keep in mind, is that nothing lasts forever. And when you buy these things, when you spend that money that you worked so hard to obtain, maybe you should actually enjoy what you pick up. And whatever happens afterward, happens afterward. That's it for me. I've been your man in Japan, Jay Contra, saying thanks for watching, see you next time, and mahalo.